you can give me any scenario. And what I did was I broke it down to the smallest pieces that I could break it down.
Yeah.
You don't just get in the car and say, well, you do. No. No, it's like, well, let's watch a video.
Yes.
How do I drive? Joseph did very well with step-by-step instructions and taking it one teeny step at a time. So what's the first thing I would do? Let him sit in a vehicle and just learn how to start it.
Yes.
That's enough for today. Hi, welcome back to Mother's Guide Through Autism Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about moving into adulthood. This episode, though, is a little different because I'm the one being interviewed by Janeen Herskovitz, who has an awesome podcast called Autism Blueprint. So if you didn't catch our interview together, Janeen interviewing me on her podcast, you can catch it here on Mother's Guide Through Autism. We have a great conversation about so many different things, including transitioning into adulthood. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Remember, if you do, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel because we want to spread knowledge, hope, and inspiration. Enjoy this interview. Let us know what you think, and we love hearing from you.
Well, Bridget Shipman, thank you for coming on the Autism Blueprint podcast. How are you?
I am doing great, and I am so excited to be here. I am honored to be a guest on your podcast.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I had the pleasure of being on yours, and I will link to that in the show notes in case people want to check that out and check out the work that you do at A Mother's Guide Through Autism. Tell me a little bit about what it is that you do and how you got to do it.
Sure. Well, what I do is I coach moms who have children on the autism spectrum. And that's all ages. Typically, people think that I coach moms who just received a diagnosis, but I actually coach all moms on all areas of the journey because no matter where you're at on your journey, there are challenges that pop up that we've never experienced before. So my son, Joseph, is now 31 years old and living independently and has his own bank account. He's doing his budgeting. He's doing very, very well. I'm very proud of him. And so I started coaching because I loved when I was a teacher, and my favorite part about teaching was helping the students figure out how to get to the other side of their struggles. Mm-hmm. Like, how can we do this self-discovery work? How can you do you first? Mm-hmm. And then let's look at fixing, other problems or how to manage your relationships or all the other things that come up in our lives, which they all do. And so if we can step back and just begin with self, do that self-discovery work and the healing or whatever it is that has brought you to your point that you're at right now in your life. Just take a breath and let's do that work first. And then let's get to the other stuff.
I love that you said that because in my office, where I do something similar, but I'm a therapist, people will often come in and say, I need help because I have a child with autism. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. And I always start with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I always start by digging into how are you doing and how are you feeling about it? And what what was your life like before the diagnosis? Because that's going to be really
Yes.
important.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite stage of like a mother's when a mother's raising a child with autism? Is there a favorite time period that you like to coach someone?
Well, I don't know if it's favorite, but it's most common, I would say, because again, like teenage years were tough. The beginning of just hearing the diagnosis was not tough. That was devastating.
Yeah.
So I tend to go there most often because I think back to myself, my young mother self walking in, completely not prepared for what I was about to hear. Did I know there were challenges? Sure. I was an educator. I knew my son had delayed speech. I knew there were things going on. I thought we were going to start speech therapy.
Yeah.
I had no idea I was going to hear your son's autistic.
Wow.
And if I could have had someone say, I know this is big. I know this is painful. You're going to be okay. Your son's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Everything, all is well. Just trust that.
Yes.
That's where I go.
Oh, I love that, because I so needed someone to tell me that.
Yeah.
And didn't have it as I'm imagining. I mean, mine was 26 years ago. So I can't imagine what it was like 31 years ago. How old was your son when he was diagnosed?
He was diagnosed at 3.
Okay.
And, at that time, the diagnosis most commonly given was pervasive development disorder, not otherwise specified.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Well, that's in the that's part of autism. Okay. What does that mean?
Right.
Because my son knew how to read. He had what back then we called hyperlexia.
Hyperlexia, mine too. Yeah.
Yeah, we have so much in common, right?
That's right.
And so he could read and he could problem solve so many puzzles and things like that. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure he's just a genius, and this I don't know what you're talking about. And then of course the whole denial piece comes back through, and did they diagnose him correctly? And there's so much that we go through as parents of children that have a daunting diagnosis, which back then it was extremely daunting. Now it's a bit more positive, but I still don't feel like the support systems are in place. So I love that you do what you do as well.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, and I love your honesty in saying that it's devastating for a parent. I mean, I think that sometimes in a lot of ways it's maybe even more difficult at times for the parent than for the child. I always felt like there was lots of support for the child, plenty of therapies for them, and plenty of things for them to do next. But for us, it was like, what am I supposed to do with this? What am I supposed to do with all these feelings?
Yeah. All the possibilities that we dream of. Becoming a mom is just like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I don't understand. I hear the words, but my body cannot absorb what I'm hearing. I can't absorb it. It's too big.
How long do you think it took you to really accept it?
Well, I don't want to, this is why I do this work, by the way. So this answer, do not let it, do not let this depress you. Okay. If you're listening to this episode, this is why we do our work. So you don't have to wait till your son is grown before you're like, oh, phew, okay. Okay, really, I do have this. I've got this as Joseph's mom. But it did. I got into life coaching because, like I said earlier, I wanted to help people do the self-discovery. Well, I love how God, the universe works, because while I was getting my training, that's when I started to heal.
I love that. I can say the same thing. My son was a teenager and I was in grad school, and that says something about learning it. I mean, it's learning how to help others, but you have to kind of do your own work first before you can only take people as far as you've gone.
Yeah.
So then you're just constantly in this place of self-discovery. And I really felt like that's when I started to completely understand that he was in there, even if he couldn't tell me he was in there all the time, and that he could have a life that was meaningful.
Oh, yes. Yes. And it's that acceptance, how can I be okay with not being okay?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's so true. So for you personally, I know we're getting really personal today.
Yeah, I love it.
For you personally, what was the most difficult part of raising your son?
I think when we start comparing our lives to others, and that can be a bad habit. If you don't have the awareness that that's what's causing you the misery, then it really is difficult to shift that. And I did not have the awareness, but the difficult part for me was that I wanted a different life. I wanted Joseph to be okay. I wanted Joseph to be able to go to parties. I wanted Joseph to be able to socialize. I didn't want him to have meltdowns and have people stare at me in the grocery store. And I was known as a good teacher, and now people are looking at me, and now they think I'm not a good mom, and all the judgment and then the piles of guilt that come along with it. So the hardest part for me was to stop comparing what my life was and start enjoying what my life is.
Oh, yes. Oh, that just so hit home for me. Absolutely. I mean, I think after the diagnosis of my son, and he was 3.5 when we got the diagnosis, and I don't think I was surprised because we saw so much going on. But again, like you, I was like, no, this kid's a genius. He's spelling his name, and our last name is Herskovitz. And he wasn't just spelling Ben Herskovitz, he was spelling Benjamin Herskovitz. We decided to make his name even longer. So I mean, he was taking the magnetic letters on the fridge and spelling things at like 2 years old, but we couldn't have a conversation. So it didn't make sense to me. And I'd see something one day, and I know I have parents tell me like, he can do this one day, and then the next day he can't do it anymore. Like there's times when they can do things, and there's other times where they just can't bring themselves to do the same skill that they knew how to do yesterday. That kind of thing. So it feels very daunting when you're in the middle of it. So I love that you talked about kind of that judgment that we feel from others, and that feeling like I'm not a good enough mom. What do you do? What should moms do when they're feeling that judgment? Because that's the biggest problem people bring into my support groups and my one-on-one work with people is I feel like everywhere I go, everybody's looking at me.
Yeah. And I think that comes down to what you and I were talking about earlier, and that is doing the work. Give yourself permission to grieve. I know for myself that I thought that if I asked for help, I was being weak, and that everyone was looking to me for all the answers. Well, if I don't have the answers, who has the answers? And I felt like I could not let one moment go by where I was weak. I had to be the strong one. At least that's what I thought. Of course, that wasn't true, but I didn't know that. And asking for help for me felt selfish. I felt guilt. I felt like it was taking away from Joseph's progress, which all those things aren't true. but yet you feel them. Like, and really at the end of the day, where I'm at today, if I walked in to Joseph's having a meltdown with who I am today, because I've done the work, I would just simply say, well, we've got another meltdown. I'm just going to park my cart over here. I apologize for the inconvenience, and away I would have tootled. You know,
Did you see yourself doing that when he was little?
oh no, I was horrified. I was horrified. I was like, oh my gosh, oh my God. I would just start sweating profusely and get out of wherever I was as quickly as I could. And worse than the judgment, I think, was when people looked at us like, oh man, I am so glad I'm not her.
Yes.
The pity look.
Pity. Oh, yes.
Oh, well, maybe if she would just, try this. And my favorite was when everyone talked really loud to Joseph. And I'm like, actually, that's one of his sensory issues. He can really hear too well. So it would be awesome, so God bless everyone, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
But how do you shift that? You shift that by doing the inner work yourself and practicing the gratitude. Those are the practices that I use every single day. Before I put my feet on the floor, I come up big, small, or indifferent. It takes me 2 seconds. I am grateful for, I feel it, and then I enter my day.
I love that. And I love that you said, I feel it, because I really think that that's, I've had clients keep gratitude journals and things like that. And, just that idea of waking up and identifying the things I'm grateful for, but then feeling the feeling in your body and sitting with it for a moment.
Yes. And then once you get that going, I add this step. Once you've got your groove on with your daily gratitude is, who do I want to be today? How do I want to live my life? And typically mine is, I want to be a person of service. So I do my gratitude, and in the midst of whatever chaos may come your way, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but you go back to, oh yes, I want to be a person of service. I am grateful. And how can I shift from this moment of deep stress, judgment, and guilt into living my gratitude and really doing it?
Yeah.
You just take a breath. Oh yeah, I want to serve.
I love that. Just setting that intention moving forward. I mean, because when I think about myself before I did the work, that wasn't even on my radar. It was it was get up, survive, get through it, and try not to cry that day.
Yes. I didn't even want to put my feet on the floor. There's a Dr. Seuss book that talks about, no, I don't want to get up today. No, not me.
I remember that book.
That was me. I was like, I just want to pull the covers, take to the bed, and I didn't want to deal. Please don't make me deal.
Yeah. This is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And I don't want it. And I think finally doing that inner work, you start to lean in. I always call it leaning in a little bit to, okay, this isn't going to be easy, but it's also doesn't have to be awful.
Yeah.
And the way we respond to what's coming at us is going to make all the difference, because our kids feel our energy.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that. I think that is so important for anyone to hear, that how you do your journey, your kids do their journey.
Yeah. And I don't know if that scares people, makes them more depressed thinking about.
Yeah, I don't think I think what it is hopefully it's an aha moment,
Yes.
because I have so many moms reach out, and then when it comes down to talking about or going to those places of pain, they just don't want any part of it. And what I say to you, if you're listening to this, is meet yourself where you're at. It's okay. It is okay. You'll get there if today's not the day. But the important piece is there is something out there.
Yes.
When you are ready.
Yes. Yes. People like you and I who have been there, made all the mistakes.
Yeah.
Would like people to learn from them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's a hopeful feeling is what I would like to stress. It's not like, oh, doom, gloom. It's like, okay, I know that when I'm ready, I have help and I have support.
I love that. I really do. You mentioned your son Joseph and that he's living on his own. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Oh, it is a journey. And it's not, I think what I noticed, and I was like this too, by the way, is that if you're at the first day of junior high and you're already thinking about, are they going to live independently? I would like to say, take a breath and slow down. Let's meet our kids where they're at too, and know that they will get there, just like the potty training. Okay.
That's right.
They will slowly get there when they decide. And if they don't, that's fine too. But what I learned was that I took Joseph one teeny tiny turtle step at a time, because he gets easily overwhelmed. He doesn't follow more than one direction at a time. He can now, but that took practice. And he has tools now like, can you text that to me, Mom? Now he'll say, I remembered the first thing, but I won't remember that. And then sometimes he doesn't remember the first thing.
Right.
So let's take, for example, you graduated from high school. And now what? Or I want to drive. How am I going to teach? He wants to drive. How am I going to teach Joseph to drive? Well, you can give me any scenario. And what I did was I broke it down to the smallest pieces that I could break it down.
Yeah.
You don't just get in the car and say, well, you do. No, it's like, well, let's watch a video.
Yes.
How do I drive? Joseph did very well with step-by-step instructions and taking it one teeny step at a time. So what's the first thing I would do? Let him sit in a vehicle and just learn how to start it. Yes. That's enough for today.
Yes. And then they have instant success when you do it that way.
Yes. And it builds their self-esteem, because you can be the most positive parent in the world. And most, not all, but most kids that are on the autism spectrum have very low self-esteem.
Yes.
They know they're different. They don't need anyone to tell them. And if I could go back and do do-overs, I would be building Joseph up more.
Yeah.
Which I do as much as I can now. And he appreciates it and he needs it.
Now your son, it sounds like his verbal abilities are pretty well developed. He can speak.
They are in certain areas for sure. When we started this journey, they called it echolalic speech.
Yes.
Yeah, Joseph had like 60 word vocabulary by the time he was 6 months old. And so that was very confusing. But he never developed the sentence structure. So we called it video talk. He would take pieces of video phrases or book phrases and try to use those to communicate.
Yes.
So once we figured out he could read, that was a game changer for us. But so we built his language. His expressive language is still a struggle, where now I can say, Joseph, I'm so sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he'll get this look and he'll go, oh, I see. Thank you for telling me. And then he'll retry, or he'll go, I'm not really sure I understand. And then I go, oh, okay. And then I try, and eventually we connect. So that part of his speech is still a struggle. But if you met him, most folks say, oh, I don't know. He had a radio job. He did. Yeah.
Wow.
He did advertisement for our local radio station, and people are just like, they love him, like that he has fans, Now he moved and he has a different job, but he's very talented in speaking when it's a script.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
We call that script. What you described, that type of echolalia from books and movies, we call it scripting in our house. And it was actually my daughter, who's 2 years younger than him, who said to me one day, Mom, I think he's using the scripts to communicate. And this was, when they were little, and I thought, well, maybe. And she's the one that would make that connection. Well, Mom, when you said this, he started scripting from this show. And I was like, oh my gosh, he did. And what's funny is my daughter's an actress. Yeah, that's what she's doing for a career. She lives in New York City. And we've scripted in my house like forever, like all of us did. We're big movie fans. And, so when I think about it now, I think, well, he was just doing what we were doing anyway to try to communicate.
Brilliant.
I know. These kids are so incredibly smart, but it's that getting it from here, getting it from the head to the mouth, or to the hands if they type or write. It's such a struggle, and it's so hard, because then the schools tell you, oh, they're intellectually delayed, or they give you all of these based on standardized tests, they give you all of these projections that are most of the time not true.
Well, right. Yeah, because they gave Joseph an IQ test. And he was barely, he wasn't even close to the average line. And I'm like, this can't be. Right. And then I found a very smart lady that got it, and she redid the test in a nonverbal test. And of course, he was off the charts. He was in the genius range. And I'm like, somewhere in the middle will be okay. It doesn't really matter. I'm not really big on labeling or testing, but when you're in the school system, you have to get, to get anywhere. Right. And back then inclusion was not available just yet. And so I was fighting hard for inclusive education.
Yeah. How do you, this might be a little controversial, but as far as inclusion now in schools, how do you feel like the schools are doing in general?
Not very well.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I don't mean that, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I am an educator. I was one of those people. I was a teacher, and I think our whole educational system needs a revamp. And I say that with a great deal of confidence, because I don't think we're serving any of our kids, much less the neurotypical kids are getting an education, but I don't think we're serving them to the best of our abilities. And the neurodiverse kids, forget about. I mean, right. I would love to just go, okay, let's go throw all the skunks on the table, and let's just say, hey, this isn't working. Yeah. Here are the things that are working. And I would really like to see our educational system catch up with the times. I feel like we're in I don't know, this is aging me, but the Flintstones, I feel like we're in bedrock right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how
we're smarter than that. The research shows more than that. We know more than that. We know to presume our kids' competence now.
Our kids are smarter.
Yes. I can't tell you how long people, even in the school system, would tell me things like, well, he doesn't understand the concept of time, or he doesn't know this, or he doesn't know that. And I would sit at the IEP table and just go, like, want to bang my hands on the table, because I knew that he knew things and couldn't let us know. And if I'm believing this and the teachers aren't, how far are we going to get?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why when I work with parents, the dreaded IEP meetings, right? I write about this too. It's really truly because I have both perspectives. The teachers are not being trained.
Correct.
They're afraid to come to the IEP meeting, most of them as well. Maybe not all, but most. And because they know that we're expecting them to lead us, and they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so I feel like the teacher training is one area that we could help them with, but also the support within the classroom. Yeah, too many students in a classroom. Come on.
Yes. And that's where I think the inclusion concept has failed,
Yeah.
because we've taken the kids, put them into class with other kids, and
Yeah.
not taught the kids how to interact with them, not taught that have an aide in the classroom or two teachers. I was a special education teacher before I became a therapist, and I taught in Southern New Jersey, and they had a great model of co-teachers. And I don't know how many schools are doing this now, but I was in a couple of different classes as the ESE teacher, because there were kids in there, and only I knew who they were, that needed the extra help. But even that's kind of the stigma of only I knew who they were.
Right.
So, nobody in the class supposedly knew, but they knew.
They knew. I was just going to say, yeah, I bet they did, because, the same kids are getting the help, but it doesn't matter, because in the world of coaching, you throw pasta at the wall, you see what sticks. So we have to try different things. And
For sure.
I understand that there is no perfect answer, but I do believe we can do better than what we are currently doing.
Absolutely. You wrote a book with your son. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So we were speaking about expressive language and such. Well, I had a really quick story. I had the privilege of being Joseph's teacher, because I taught a life skills class. Well, go figure, a life coach teaching a life skills class way before I knew about it. But anyway, I discovered that Joseph could express himself not just well, but like on the wow level in his writing.
Nice.
And so I knew in that moment, okay, we're onto something here. Not only is he a great reader, but he's an outstanding writer. So we got into this work, and the name of the book, A Mother's Guide Through Autism, Joseph and I came up with together through a conversation, but he's the one who, through this conversation, let me know that I was his tour guide of life. And so A Mother's Guide Through Autism was born. And it is a coaching book, but I also talk about our story and my pain and my experience. Had to fight pretty hard to get publishers to be able to do this flip, because this is Joseph's perspective of his own journey. So we talk about our own journeys with two completely different perspectives. And his is through the eyes of the guided. So it's two books in one, to a mom's perspective and a young adult living with autism.
I love that. And for our listeners that aren't watching on YouTube, but they're listening just to the audio, the book, when you flip it over, has a different cover, and then it has Joseph's story going in that direction. That is so cool. I can't wait to read it. That's really, really neat.
Yeah. And he got to help design his book cover. And, it's all about the details, right? Well, he wanted to add, there's a man on top of the mountain looking up at the stars. And that's him.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Is he a real thoughtful, intuitive kind of guy?
He gives me the most profound one-liners. I mean, he sets me completely straight in one sentence. And he's also a wonderful artist. I have his paintings in our home. And he's who I want to be when I grow up.
Oh, I love that so much. Gosh, did you ever think 30 years ago that you would ever say that?
No, and that's why I do this work, right?
Yeah.
Don't you just want moms to know or parents to know that, yeah, it's gonna be tough. You know, you need to tighten your tennis shoes a bit.
Yeah.
And make sure you've got the support,
Right.
but you're gonna be okay. You're gonna
Yeah.
figure out your new normal. You're gonna be okay with not being okay, accepting it.
No, you're absolutely right. Being okay with not being okay. That's actually very hopeful.
Good. I'm
It
glad
really
because it's
feels
in the
very
book.
hopeful. Well, and
It's in the-
I will definitely link to your book in the show notes so that people can grab it and take a look. And also, you have a podcast as well.
Yeah, we do. Joseph helped start that as well. And it's everything we do is Mother's Guide Through Autism. So our podcast is Mother's Guide Through Autism. We have a Facebook group that you can join, Mother's Guide Through Autism. It's private, where you can just throw anything out there for emotional support. It's all about knowledge, hope, and inspiration. We don't go to places that aren't helpful, right?
Yeah.
At least I want to stay positive and just build and love you and support you. So that's what that's about. And we have, and you can listen to the podcast anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. You can go to our website, mothersguidethroughautism.com, and learn more about us and see how to work with us. And it's all about doing your own work first, as I know you know that, but we connect because we both know that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the last question I always like to ask people is, if every autism parent in the world were listening, what would you want them to know?
That whether you're where you ever you are, if you haven't done the inner work yet, if you'll step back and take a breath, this child, or some of you that have children on the spectrum, are the biggest gift. That you're privileged, and it's an honor to have these children. And really and truly take a step back and look at the beauty that you're privileged to share, and you get to be their parent. That's what I want you to know. It's an honor, it's a privilege. And I sure wouldn't be who I am. I'm a much, much better person because of Joseph. Your child is your best teacher. And I know that sounds cliche and boring, but it is so true. And I'm talking about life. I'm talking about life lessons. We are sharing this earth with many, many people. And it's a gift, man. And enjoy the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. Well, Bridget, thank you for coming on today. Mother's Guide Through Autism. I'll link to everything in the show notes. And thanks so much. I'm sure I'll have you on again.
Oh, I would love to. And you as well on Mother's Guide. We want you back for sure.
Okay, awesome. You take care.
Okay, you too.